Okay, let's dive right in. Welcome to our Masterclass Explainer. Look, we're here to take you from a casual map reader to a true practicing master of the cartographic craft. I'm absolutely thrilled to guide you through this, because while we aren't just learning how to draw a few lines on a page, we're getting into the science, the art, and the deep underlying psychology of how human beings actually understand the physical space around them. It's a real game changer. Here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. First, welcome to the craft. Then, the map maker's core principles, simplicity and data sacrifice, mastering visual variables, translating reality into maps, and we'll wrap up with the future of mapmaking.
All right, part 1. Welcome to the craft.
To really ground ourselves, we need to look at a major historical milestone. Way back in 1952, Arthur Robinson published this slender but literally field-defining volume called The Look of Maps. He was calling for a highly objective scientific approach to what we do. He essentially said, hey, even if our map's content is perfectly suited to its purpose, we still have to rigorously evaluate the visual methods we're using to convey that content. As aspiring experts, this is your fundamental duty. You have to ensure your visual methods are perfectly and efficiently communicating that spatial data right into the human mind. Because the actual process of map communication works as a continuous loop. We aren't just illustrators, right? We're facilitating a crucial flow of understanding. It starts with raw, real-world information. That gets analyzed by you, the cartographer. You make very calculated design choices to create the map, and finally, the user retrieves that information. If there's a breakdown at literally any step in the cycle, like if your visual language is confusing or your contrast is completely off, the entire communication loop just completely fails. Moving on to Section 2, the map maker's core principles. Okay, these are your absolute non-negotiables. First, concept before compilation. You need to know exactly what your map is supposed to do long before you even open your software. Second, user first, user last. User-centered design is literally everything here. You always have to ask, what do they need? What are they actually going to get from this? Third is hierarchy with harmony. The most important data points must look the most important, but they have to balance aesthetically with the rest of the layout. And finally, your ultimate goal is to deliver maximum information at the absolute minimum cognitive cost to your reader. So here's where it gets a little wild. To hit that minimum cognitive cost, you sometimes have to be a bit of a magician. Paradoxically, to effectively tell the absolute truth about a geographical space, you sometimes have to employ cartographic fictions, impressions, and clever visual illusions. We engage the user's emotion to engage their understanding. Think about slightly exaggerating a curve in a crucial road so it's actually legible at a global scale, or tweaking colors to create a false but highly readable 3D depth. You're actually using a visual illusion to communicate a spatial truth. Which brings us to Section 3, simplicity and data sacrifice. We have to talk about your most vital tool for creating that harmony and simplicity. It's called generalization. Essentially, it's the abstraction and selection of features to reduce complexity. You are deliberately stripping away characteristics of mapped objects that just aren't relevant to your map's core purpose. Generalization is a constant reminder that a map's ultimate clarity actually comes from your calculated sacrifice of data.
You see, amateur mapmakers, they try to cram absolutely everything onto the page. But as you're going to learn very quickly, what you bravely choose to leave off the canvas is often far more important than the raw data you decide to keep. A master-level map is never defined by how much data it holds. It's defined by the profound simplicity that emerges from your highly disciplined sacrifices.
And there's a really intricate relationship between map scale and this idea of generalization. Notice what naturally happens when you zoom out from a large-scale map to a small-scale map, meaning, zooming way out to see a much larger chunk of the Earth. Your level of informational detail naturally drops, right? Your symbolization absolutely must become more generalized. The map scale ultimately dictates exactly how much information you literally have to sacrifice just to maintain basic legibility. Let's jump into Section 4, Mastering Visual Variables. Now, check out the difference between these two approaches. A general reference map gives you natural navigational context. We're talking coastlines, cities, borders, all differentiated by standard expected symbols. But a thematic map? That relies on highly distinct visual variables to focus purely on one specific dataset, like population density or average income. This is exactly where the deep psychological impact of color and contrast comes into play. You're strategically guiding the user's eye directly to a theme, rather than just helping them navigate from point A to point B. To really hammer this home, consider these three variations of the exact same 1990 US population data.
One option uses a choropleth technique with dark and light shading across individual counties. Another applies that same shading but generalizes it all the way up to the state level. And then a third option abandons the shading entirely in favor of proportional symbol circles. Just observe how manipulating those visual variables completely alters the story the user perceives. It changes their immediate understanding of density and totally shifts the visual weight of different regions.
All right, Section 5, Translating Reality into Maps. In modern GIS and cartography, you always have to distinguish between two incredibly vital stages. First is your digital landscape model, or DLM. Think of this as the raw, abstract, scale-independent database of reality that lives in your system. It's the exact coordinates, the totally unedited geometry. Then you have your digital cartographic model, or DCM. The DCM is your actual symbolized visual product. It's the stage where you apply all that generalization and those visual variables we just talked about, effectively converting a raw database into a readable map. So the whole workflow tracks from bottom to top. We start with physical reality as the base. We process all that into our DLM database. We design our visual representations to build the DCM, and then we output a map, whether that's on a screen or on paper. But here's the kicker. The ultimate goal happens at the very end of the chain. It's about seamlessly implanting a clear cognitive wrap directly into the user's brain. Frankly, your digital output is completely useless if it doesn't create accurate cognitive understanding in the human mind. Finally, Section 6, the future of mapmaking. I gotta tell you, you are entering this field at an unbelievably exhilarating time. The tools available to a modern cartographer are evolving so fast. Emerging technologies like virtual reality are allowing us to visualize 3D geospatial relationships in ways we never even thought possible. Open-source web tools and dynamic on-screen dissemination mean your maps can be highly interactive, updated in real time, and shared with the whole world in an instant. Plus, geovisual analytics are starting to blend massive data science directly into our visual designs. It's incredible. However, and this is a big however, with these incredibly advanced, wide-reaching tools comes an immense ethical responsibility. The power to shape how millions of people see the world is profound. It is absolutely crucial that we never intentionally lie with our data. That means showing all relevant information and never, ever discarding data just because it contradicts the specific message you want to send. We have to accurately report all our sources and ensure our symbols respect differing cultural values. It's not just best practice, it's what it means to be a trustworthy professional. So, as you step out of this explainer and into the wider world of geographic information, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. You now hold the core principles of hierarchy and simplicity. You understand the profound psychological power of visual variables and the mechanics of translating raw digital landscapes into actual human understanding. So, what realities will you choose to build? And how will your maps ultimately shape the cognitive understanding of tomorrow's users? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I honestly can't wait to see the incredible, ethical, and beautiful maps you're going to create.